The screech of metal on metal still echoed in my ears as I raced through the sterile hospital corridors of Georgetown University Hospital. Anya's car had gone off the Key Bridge just hours ago, plunging into the Potomac in a fiery wreck that made every news channel in D.C. Her family had already circled the wagons around her ICU room, their polished faces masks of controlled grief. "I'm sorry, but who exactly are you to my daughter?" her mother demanded, ice dripping from every syllable, as if I were some opportunistic reporter crashing the vigil. I stood there in my tailored black suit, the one Anya had picked out for me last month during our secret weekend in Annapolis, and felt the ground tilt beneath my heels. Victoria Hale, rising star at Kensington and Voss, the most cutthroat political consulting firm in the capital, reduced to a stranger by the very people who should have known better. But they didn't know. No one did. Not the partners who pitted us against each other for the same senior director slot, not the clients whose billion-dollar contracts hung on our every move, and certainly not Anya's blue-blood Virginia family, who still believed their only daughter would one day marry the right senator's son. My hand tightened around the crumpled envelope in my pocket. The emergency directive Anya had forced me to keep in my safe 6 months ago after a late-night argument about what-ifs. "If anything ever happens to me," she'd whispered against my neck, "you decide. Not them." The document named me sole medical proxy and executor of her living will. One signature from me could override every decision her family tried to make. And in the world we lived in, that single piece of paper was worth more than any promotion. It was the difference between protecting the empire we'd secretly built together and watching it crumble, while I stood on the sidelines pretending I barely knew her. The doctor emerged then, clipboard in hand, eyes flicking between me and the Wallaces. "Ms. Wallace is stable but in a medically induced coma. Brain swelling is our primary concern. We need a decision on the next course of treatment within the hour." Anya's mother stepped forward, chin lifted like she was addressing a subcommittee. "We'll handle this as a family." I pulled the envelope out, heart hammering so hard I was sure they could hear it. "Actually," I said, voice steadier than I felt, "you won't." The silence that followed was sharper than any boardroom takedown I'd survived at Kensington. Her father's face drained of color. Her brother, the one who'd once tried to set Anya up with a congressman, looked like he'd been slapped. And I knew in that moment that every careful lie we'd told for 3 years was about to explode. But I also knew something else. In this city, power wasn't given. It was taken. And right now, the only person who could keep Anya's legacy intact, keep our legacy intact, was me. Even if it meant becoming the villain in every story they would tell about her. I signed the forms with a hand that didn't shake because in our world shaking was weakness. The nurse led me to the glass wall overlooking Anya's room. She looked so small under the machines, her dark hair fanned across the pillow, the same hair I'd run my fingers through during stolen nights in my Adams Morgan apartment. 3 years of hiding, 3 years of competing on the same projects while stealing kisses in elevator cars between floors, 3 years of promising each other that the next promotion would be the last lie we told. Now the lie was all that stood between me and losing her forever. By midnight the hospital had become a battlefield. Anya's mother, Eleanor Wallace, had already called in their family attorney, a shark from one of the big Virginia firms who specialized in estate disputes. He arrived in a $3,000 suit, smelling of bourbon and entitlement, and demanded to see the directive. I handed it over without a word, watching his eyes widen as he read the clause that explicitly excluded blood relatives from medical decisions in the event of incapacity. "This can't be binding," he sputtered. "She's under duress or—" "She's not," I cut in, keeping my voice low so the nurses wouldn't overhear. "And the firm's general counsel already reviewed it last year. It's ironclad." I didn't mention that the general counsel was one of the few people who suspected something between Anya and me, but had chosen silence in exchange for my discretion on a messy client file. In D.C., favors were currency. Eleanor paced the waiting room like a caged lioness. "You expect us to believe our daughter would trust a colleague, a rival from what I've heard, with her life?" The word rival landed like a slap. She knew more than she let on, or at least suspected. Kensington and Voss thrived on gossip. It was only a matter of time before someone connected the dots. I met her gaze without flinching. "Believe what you want. But right now the neurologist needs approval for the experimental protocol, And I'm the only one who can give it. Inside my stomach twisted. Anya and I had fought over that same protocol 6 weeks ago. She wanted to push it for a high-profile client. I wanted caution. Now I was signing off on it for her. Irony tasted like blood. My phone vibrated relentlessly. Kensington Partners. Clients. My own assistant, Sarah, texting updates on the Hillerman account, the 8-figure lobbying contract Anya and I had been battling to lead. With Anya out, the partners were already circling. I'd received 3 separate offers to step in as lead, each one laced with the unspoken threat that refusal would look like weakness. In our firm, weakness got you reassigned to the mailroom. I stepped into the hallway to answer the latest call. Richard Voss himself, founding partner and the man who'd once told me women like me only made partner if we played the game smarter than the men. Hail tragic about Wallace. Terrible timing with Hillerman voting next week. The team thinks you should take point. Prove you're ready for senior director. I glanced back at the glass wall where Anya lay motionless. Senior director. The title we'd both killed ourselves for, the one that would finally let us stop hiding, if we could just outlast the gossip. I'll handle it, I told him, voice flat. But I need autonomy on the strategy. Done, he said too quickly. Just keep the Wallaces happy. We can't afford that family pulling their connections. I hung up and leaned against the wall, eyes burning. Keeping the Wallaces happy meant staying in the shadows, playing the concerned colleague. But the directive gave me power I couldn't unsee. Anya's offshore accounts, her voting shares in 3 PACs, even the Georgetown townhouse we'd secretly bought together under an LLC. Everything funneled through structures only I could access now. One wrong move and the firm would learn the truth. One right move and I could protect her empire while burying our relationship forever. The choice should have been easy. Survival first. That's what Anya would have done. She'd once killed a rival's career with a single leaked memo because he threatened her bonus. I'd watched her do it and told myself it was just the game. But standing there listening to the machines breathe for her, I wondered if I still believed that. By dawn I'd approved the protocol. Eleanor's attorney filed an emergency motion to contest the directive. The hospital ethics board scheduled a hearing for noon. And I did what any good operator in this town would do. I called in every favor I had, including one from the junior partner who'd been sleeping with Anya's brother. Information was leverage. Always had been. The boardroom on the 20th floor of Kensington and Voss smelled of fresh coffee and desperation. I'd called an emergency strategy session at 6 a.m., 3 hours after leaving the hospital, because the Hillerman vote waited for no one. 8 senior associates stared at me across the mahogany table. The same table where Anya and I had once argued for 40 minutes about messaging before slipping away to the parking garage for 10 minutes of stolen silence. Wallace is out indefinitely, I said, sliding the updated deck across the table. I'm assuming lead. Questions? No one spoke. They knew better. But I saw the calculations behind their eyes. Victoria Hale, suddenly unchecked, suddenly dangerous. The woman who'd always been Anya's shadow now held both their portfolios. Sarah, my assistant, passed out fresh NDAs. Sign or clear your desks. Later, in my office, the door locked. I opened the encrypted folder Anya had left on the shared drive. Not for work. For us. Photos from last summer in the Outer Banks. Her head on my shoulder as we watched the sunrise. Both of us in baseball caps and sunglasses because even then we couldn't risk being recognized. A voice memo dated 2 weeks ago. Vic, if you're listening to this, something went wrong. Don't let them take the Hillerman file. It's our ticket out. But more than that, don't let them take you from me. Her voice cracked on the last word. I closed my eyes and let myself remember the night we finally admitted it. 3 years ago, after closing a brutal Senate race, we'd ended up at my apartment splitting a bottle of Macallan. Anya had looked at me across the kitchen island and said, I can't keep pretending I don't want this. I'd answered by kissing her so hard we knocked over the glasses. The next morning we swore it would never affect work. We lied to ourselves for 36 months. Now the lie was fracturing. Richard Voss had already scheduled a partners meeting for Friday to discuss restructuring in light of recent events. Translation. Decide whether to promote me or bury me with Anya's absence. The Wallace's motion was gaining traction in Virginia courts. Old money still bought judges. I made the first cold call at 9. To Senator Hillerman's chief of staff. Anya's out, but the strategy holds. I need your vote locked by Wednesday. He hesitated. I reminded him of the opposition research I'd buried for him last year. He folded. One down. By lunch I'd neutralized 3 more threats. Each call felt like carving away pieces of myself. Anya would have been proud. The thought made me sick. At 2 o'clock the hospital called. Anya's intracranial pressure was stabilizing. The doctor sounded cautiously optimistic. She's responding better than expected. For the first time since the crash I let myself hope. Then Eleanor Wallace walked into my office unannounced, security trailing helplessly behind her. "We know about the townhouse," she said quietly, placing a folder on my desk. "Photos, bank records, our LLC. And we know about the 2 of you." My blood turned to ice. Eleanor didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. In her world, quiet threats carried more weight than screams. "My daughter spent years building a name this city respects. A name that opens doors in every corridor of power. And you were supposed to be her colleague, not her distraction." The pause before the last word dripped with contempt. I kept my hands flat on the desk so they wouldn't shake. "If you expose us, you expose her. The PACs, the offshore structures, the Hillerman strategy, she built half of it on the understanding that our relationship stayed buried. Blow that up and every donor walks." She smiled thin and sharp. "Or we quietly rewrite the directive, pay you a generous settlement, and you disappear from her life. The firm will never know. Your career stays intact. Everyone wins. Except Anya. And me. And the future we'd whispered about on nights when the city lights looked like stars." I thought of the ring I'd hidden in my safe white gold simple, bought the day after she told me she loved me for the first time. Never worn. Never would be, if Eleanor had her way. I stood slowly. "The directive stands. The hearing is in 40 minutes. If you want to fight, do it in court. But know this. I have copies of everything. Every email, every transfer, every late-night strategy session where we built something bigger than either of us. You drag me through the mud and I'll make sure the whole city sees exactly how involved your family was in the deals that made Anya untouchable." Her eyes narrowed. For the first time she looked uncertain. "You're bluffing. Try me." She left without another word. I sank into my chair and opened the bottom drawer where I kept the emergency bourbon. 1 sip. Just enough to steady the roar in my head. Then I called Sarah. "Cancel my 3 o'clock. And get me everything on the Wallace family trusts." Quietly. The afternoon dissolved into damage control. I signed off on Anya's treatment escalation, approved a risky media buy for Hillerman that Anya had designed, and quietly transferred voting rights on 2 PACs into a holding company only I controlled. Each keystroke felt like another brick in the wall between us and the world. At 6 my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Tonight. Rooftop bar at the W. Anya's brother." I almost ignored it. Almost. But in this city you never ignored the second in line. The rooftop was freezing. Alex Wallace stood at the railing, scotch in hand, looking every inch the polished air. "My mother thinks you're the devil. I think you're the only one who actually loves my sister." He didn't turn around. "She told me once, after too much wine, that you were the only person who ever saw her. Not the name, not the money. Just her." I joined him at the railing. "Then why are you here?" "Because if she wakes up and finds out you sold her out to protect your career, she'll never forgive either of us." He finally faced me. "The firm is going to offer you senior director on Friday. Take it. But use the position to protect her, not bury her. And when she wakes, because she will, tell her the truth about what you did to keep her empire alive." He pressed a flash drive into my hand. "Insurance. Everything my mother has on you too. Destroy it after you copy it." I watched him walk away and felt the first crack in the armor I'd built since the crash. Maybe love wasn't the weakness I'd always feared. Maybe it was the only strategy left. Friday arrived like a verdict. The partners' conference room smelled of leather and old money. Richard Voss sat at the head of the table, the other 3 senior partners flanking him like judges. I stood alone at the far end, the same spot where Anya had stood 6 months ago when they dangled the same promotion in front of her. "Hail," Voss began. "Your leadership on Hillerman has been impressive under difficult circumstances. The client is locked. The vote is ours. Therefore, effective immediately, you are promoted to senior director. Applause. Polite. Calculated. I accepted the engraved plaque with the smile I'd practiced in the mirror for years. Inside, I was already calculating the next move. Because the promotion came with strings, public distance from Anya's case, a gag order on any personal involvement, and a subtle warning that the Wallaces were still clients. I took the elevator straight to the hospital. The doctors had begun the process of bringing Anya out of the coma. Her vitals were strong. Eleanor was nowhere in sight. Alex had kept his word and run interference. I sat beside her bed for the first time without security watching and took her hand. I did what you would have done, I whispered. I protected us. But I think I lost pieces of myself doing it. When you wake up, tell me it was worth it. The monitors beeped steadily. No answer. That night I met Alex again. This time in the underground parking garage beneath my building. He looked exhausted. Mother filed a new motion. Claims coercion. The judge is a golf buddy of Dad's. We might lose the directive by Monday. I handed him the flash drive he'd given me. Then we play the only card left. Sunday morning the Washington Post received an anonymous package. Not everything, just enough. A single email chain showing Eleanor Wallace pressuring a federal regulator on a deal that directly benefited the family's real estate holdings. Nothing illegal on its face, but the optics in this town were deadly. By noon the story was everywhere. By 3 the judge had mysteriously recused himself. I sat in my apartment surrounded by half-packed boxes. I'd already decided to move Anya to a private facility upstate if I had to, and stared at the ring in my palm. 3 years of waiting. 3 years of almost. Monday the hospital called at dawn. She's asking for you. I drove through DC rush hour like the city owed me speed. When I walked into the room, Anya's eyes, those sharp, beautiful eyes, found mine immediately. She looked frail but alive. Vic, she rasped. What the hell did you do? I laughed even as tears spilled over. I kept my promise. She reached for my hand. You shouldn't have had to. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in controlled chaos. Anya recovered faster than the doctors predicted, but the damage was done. The firm quietly reassigned half her accounts to me, senior director perks, and the partners made it clear that any public acknowledgement of our relationship would end both our careers. Eleanor Wallace never spoke to me again, but she stopped fighting the directive. Alex became an unlikely ally, feeding me just enough family intelligence to keep the wolves at bay. Anya and I never went back to pretending. We simply became more careful. Private jets instead of commercial flights. Separate entrances at every event. The ring stayed in my safe, but we both knew it was only a matter of time. The Hillerman account closed with record numbers. My name was on every headline. Anya's was on the recovery updates the firm released to save face. We were untouchable. Until the night she found the flash drive I'd never destroyed. The one with every piece of leverage I'd used against her family. She held it up in the dim light of our new Georgetown townhouse, the one we'd finally bought in both our names under layers of LLCs no one could trace. You blackmailed my mother. It wasn't a question. I didn't deny it. I protected us. She set the drive down slowly. And what did it cost you? Nothing I wasn't willing to pay. Anya crossed the room and took my face in her hands. That's the problem, Vic. We keep paying until there's nothing left of who we were when we started. We stood there a long time, foreheads touching, the city humming 20 floors below. 2 women who'd built an empire on secrets, who had chosen each other over everything, and who now had to live with the choices that choice required. Some nights I still wonder if the woman who signed those hospital forms is the same woman Anya fell in love with. Some nights she wonders the same about me. True or false? In the end, the only way to win at power is to make sure love becomes just another strategy.